Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Krishna, and this is the third part of my Rod Serling tribute. So welcome back. If you haven't watched the first two parts, go ahead and take a look at it. It's where I work real time, penciling and inking this image of Rod Serling that you see before you. So now I've decided to go ahead and put this into a different size canvas that resembles the size of a magazine cover. And what I'm doing here is I'm simply wanting to add a little bit more to this image. So I'm going back through and I'm actually sketching a foreshortened hand. I want this hand to appear like it's coming out in front of us. So here's my approach to just basically drawing this hand. This is done in real time. When I get to the inking part, I do speed that part up just because you've already seen me ink before. So one helpful tip that I recommend when drawing hands, obviously I'm looking at a reference off screen here. I'm just drawing the top part of the fingers, and that really helps me kind of situate where the fingers bend at their joints. Something that helps remove some of the complication. I actually looked up a composite, or rather a different version or a different photo of Rod Serling holding a cigarette, because the version that I drew here did not have him holding a cigarette. So I had to kind of bring those two things together. So here I'm bringing this hand up. I'm noticing now that the position of the forearm feels a little bit too weird. He does not have that long of an arm, so I have to make some corrections here. And now you can see me making those corrections. So you have to be able to adjust and tweak the reference as needed. Got some pretty cool comments about people's favorite episodes of The Twilight Zone in the last video. My question to you on this video is, have you seen the 80s series and the 2000 series and the one that came out, I think, a couple of years ago, 2020 or 2021, I can't remember. What do you think of those incarnations of The Twilight Zone? I've seen a few of the 80s episodes. Some of them are okay. Some of them are just a little bit gimmicky. They don't really, in my opinion, capture the vibe of it. I've seen a few of the Forrest Whitaker narrated Twilight Zones in the 2000s. Again, the quality is pretty uneven throughout. My favorite remains the original classic Rod Serling narrated Twilight Zones. They're not perfect either, but there's, I think, better quality. So here I'm using the shape tool, and I'm adjusting the stroke to make it thinner. I want to actually make a television set, and I really like the shape tools in Photoshop now. They really resemble the way they work in Illustrator, and I think that they're pretty intuitive. So I want to have this TV set in proper perspective. So I'm going to hit Command T, and I'm going to change the perspective like so. I want to avoid tangents. You can see where Rod's pinky, it's really close to the edge of the tube. So I'm moving him in a little bit to avoid tangents. I've just realized for long form content, I prefer to record and then record my voice after the fact. One keyboard shortcut you'll see me use quite a bit is Shift Command N or Shift Option Command N to quickly make a new layer. In Photoshop, that's a good keyboard shortcut to know. Now I'm making a set of rotary dials for this television. This is supposed to resemble an old school TV. Again, I just dropped the stroke and I'm duplicating by hitting Command J. Command J is a great keyboard shortcut you should know. Command J duplicates a selection or it duplicates a layer. So it's a really good keyboard shortcut to keep in your pocket. When you're working with something like a magazine or anything that's for print, really, you have to think about, your print safe margins. And that's what I will be considering here in a moment. Right now I'm just boxing out the TV set. But anything that is really close to the edge will potentially get trimmed off. So you want to just be aware of that and adjust your image so that it's not going to lose any valuable information. So to make diagonal lines, just hold down the Shift key, make a straight line, and then use the Transform Rotate, and you can make it diagonal. I've covered that tip in previous videos. It's a good one. You'll see that little set of images on the far left there. That is actually a plugin called Pexels. It allows you to look up royalty-free copyleft images that you can just literally drag and drop into Photoshop. So you don't have to go to the website, download it, and then bring it in. I was planning on talking about that in an upcoming tips and tricks video, but you're seeing it now. So that one's really handy. It's a free plugin. If you go to the Manage Plugins part of Photoshop, if you go to that menu, you can add the Pexels plugin. It's totally free and it's pretty awesome. I didn't use any of those photos for this particular image, but I just forgot to close it out. I don't use the eraser tool. I always use the lasso tool to erase. I find it more precise, it's faster. Keyboard shortcut to switch to the lasso tool is L. And if you want to switch between the different types of lasso tools, you want to hit the Shift key with the L to do that. So now, just in terms of anticipating what I'm doing, again, this is all done in real time except where noted. So there are moments where I'm thinking about things and, I didn't pause the camera. It's just recording everything through and through. So I wanted Rod's hand to pop out, and I want to have a set of cards. And these cards are going to actually appear to be coming out in perspective. So what I did was I drew a rectangle, used the transform perspective, pulled the handle out, and just moved it into position here. I'm going to make copies of that by hitting Command J and rotating it and scaling it as needed. I want to have a series of these things, like as if they're either being projected out by the TV or coming towards the TV. You take your pick, but they're just going to, I'm adding that in just to give this composition a little bit more depth. We talk about foreground, midground, background, and I think it's a good idea to have that. I'm also incorporating some overlap. You can see that the cards are overlapping against the TV set. They're also overlapping against one another, and overlap is another way that you can create depth within your composition, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm also altering the size. And in my upcoming video, I'll show you how you can draw items that are on those cards. You know, there's going to be a few different symbols that I'm going to put on those cards, and I want to show you how I, managed to do that and to keep the perspective of the card. And what I mean by that is I'm going to freehand the drawings on the cards in proper perspective, but I'm going to use grids. So I'll talk about that in an upcoming video. So if you haven't already subscribed, consider subscribing to the channel. That way I know who is, who's watching these videos, and it also tells me that you're getting some knowledge and some benefit from this channel. That's really the goal of this channel, to help folks out. If you're new to the channel, welcome. You can peruse all the older videos, and you can see all the different tips and tricks that I've talked about in those videos that I'm incorporating here. So little sleight of hand, what I've done here is with those cards, I've actually made a selection and filled it in with white that basically gives those cards a fill, a white fill. And this allows me to position the cards where I don't have to worry about what's behind the cards. And this is something that I do a lot. Instead of having to cut out sections of the drawing, I will just, if it's a series of solid shapes, I will just fill it in with white, and that just allows me to see it as it's intended. Now, I think I started to play with some typography in this video, but then I just quickly realized that that's just a boring part of the process. There's a lot of trial and error. There's some experimentation. The typography that I'll be showing you here in a minute, I didn't really end up liking any of it, so I just did that, after the recording. Here I'm creating the top part of the TV set. Again, holding down the Shift key. On a new layer, I'm simply drawing another short line, and I'm positioning it like so. It's okay if there's a little bit of a, overshoot. You can always fix that. I use Command F. I've assigned that as a custom keyboard shortcut to flip horizontal. I've used that to replace the, apply filter command, just because I use this flip horizontal thing way more. I'm very, comfortable with making new layers. I think it's totally fine to do that. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm putting a little bit of an insignia, or at least marking out the spot where, you might see the television brand. So I'm just drawing that in, and then I can reposition that to the center. Now, this is, part of the reason why you're seeing a little bit of a delay is because I'm actually thinking through these problems in real time. I'm trying to go in an expedient way, but I'm still, there is some contemplation. I did not make any thumbnails. That's usually the way I would do it if I'm working for a client. This is just a drawing for me. I have an idea of what I want to do, and the idea just starts to manifest and come together as I work. But if I was doing something for a client, if this was actually something I would be talking to an art director or an editor with, I would save myself a lot of time by just doing some quick rough thumbnails and then making sure that those are okay before proceeding forward. So I filled in these areas outside of the objects in black, and then what you're not seeing here and what you'll see pop in here in a minute, I've got a series of textures that I have on my hard drive And I'm just bringing those in. I'm going to make a copy. I'm going to hit Command F to flip horizontally. And this is going to serve as the stars. I'm basically going to, merge those two texture layers together, select them, and then make a new layer above it, fill it in with white to get that, kind of space type of feel here. And you can see that wasn't perfect. There are still some of those little dots or those little textures showing up on the TV. So that's what I'm doing now with the lasso tool. I'm just selecting large swaths of that texture that I see on the TV set and just trying to cut them out by hitting Command X. So there will be certain things that are on those cards, but I'm going to save that for the next video. So here's where I start playing around with typography. I'm just, typing in the text. I didn't quite, I wanted to have the name Twilight Zone, but I didn't want to, I wanted to maybe call it Twilight Zone Monthly. So I'm just playing with the actual Twilight Zone font. Believe it or not, I didn't end up going with this. It's a cool font for, the opening of the TV show, but I feel like it's just a little bit too busy and a little bit distracting. And you'll see here later on that, I don't like it. So I'm basically getting rid of it. I did that off screen. I just kind of added my typography stuff. When I had a little bit more time to carefully think about it. But, as you work through a design, sometimes you have false starts, and that's part of the reason why I'm leaving the stuff in there. It's just the stuff didn't work, and you can see why it didn't work. Here's where I tried to add a stroke to make it pop. I just hated it. I tried playing with the size of the stroke, didn't look good, so I ended up just aborting that. And that happens. There's no shame in trying things out and finding out things, that things don't work. I think that's just part of the design process. So here I want to add a little bit of an inset to the TV set. I should have done this at an earlier step, but I didn't. Basically repeating the same process where I make a rectangle and adjusted stroke. Pulling in on those blue circles allows me to make a rounded rect, and I'm just using the perspective tool to position it. And now I'm using the scale tool to adjust the inset. If I did it over again, if I had to do it over again, I would have just made a copy of that while I was initially building the TV set, but I forgot. And I think this would actually look good with it, so I wanted to put it back in there. So now you can see that there's a slight tangent with that pinky. Do need to go ahead and fix that. I think I end up doing that a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And there are certain parts of Rod's suit that I need to get rid of. So that's where I'm going to come back in with my lasso tool. And I'm just going to trim that extra part. There we go. Actually, it's a rectangular marquee tool. Command X gets rid of that. And there we go. So if you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up so other folks can find it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.